and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a Q&A video with some juicy questions. I asked you on Instagram to ask me anything, and I said that juicy questions are allowed because I know sometimes people might not want to, out of politeness, maybe ask some questions that might be more sensitive. But I kind of said, you know, the doors are open, ask me anything, it's okay.
Oh my god, I can't believe I've just gone ahead and done this. I decided to knit and crochet my own wedding dress in approximately 5 weeks' time.
How much do you spend on yarn on average a month?
Right?
Do I have any hobbies outside of this?
I have a question for you. We can edit this out if it gets too awkward. We're just gonna dive into the deep end with some of the more juicy stuff. And so one of the questions that came up a lot was actually, oh, I'm already, well, it's very personal. And one of the questions that came up a lot was if kids are on the horizon or if me and Juki are gonna have kids. And a lot of you also asked about Juki, and I'm gonna share more about him and kind of also the relationship status, because so many of you were also interested to know if we're getting married or if we've gotten married, because we are engaged, and I shared that here on the channel. But the question about children, so I am 34. I turned 34 in March, and now it is July when I'm sitting and filming this, July 2022. And actually, we've been trying to have children, or I've been trying to get pregnant for over a year now. And the reason it feels, well, it is very personal, but at the same time, I was thinking about if this is something I want to share, because quite often I feel like when people are sort of trying to get pregnant or are, you know, want to start a family, you don't really hear people talk about it until they are pregnant or they've passed that, 3 months that they've gotten pregnant, and then maybe stories of how they were trying for years surface. But yeah, so we decided, it's exactly almost a year ago to the date now, in June last year, that we were gonna try. We have been talking about it and both want children, but it's been a year. And as you can imagine, there has been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of disappointments because it's still not been successful. And I've had a few times where I already thought that, ooh, maybe now, all the signs are there, my period has been late and stuff, but then it hasn't happened yet. And of course, this is a little bit scary, and it brings up all kinds of emotions because it's something that I don't know if it's going to be possible. Maybe it's going to be really difficult. And when we started, it's kind of easy to be like, oh, we'll just see how it goes and kind of be relaxed about it. And it's just, kind of a light and fun and, a really joyful thing and exciting. But then when time has moved on and there's our expectations, and of course you start to get hopeful, and when, time and time again, a month after month, you get disappointed, it's really, a couple of times, it's been really, really difficult to deal with that. And it's still like, it's an ongoing process. So I don't know. Children, I hope so. I really hope so, because as I said, I am 34. And I know that it at least won't get easier. So hopefully it will happen. It's a project that is, we're working on it. And I mean, of course, a year maybe isn't that long. And I know I just heard a story about somebody who they went through IVF 7 times until they had their first child. So, there's so many different stories out there, but I just thought I'll just share this, even though it kind of feels a little bit vulnerable and a little bit personal and something that I think about a lot, but I've spoken with some friends and stuff with it, but it's not something like I'm, shouting to the world, because it does feel like I don't know what the outcome is going to be essentially. And it's always a little bit scary, I think, to share something when it's still a work in progress and don't know how it's going to go. But that's the first juicy question answered. So I guess I'll keep you updated on that one.
Alright, we've just arrived here out at the summer house, so I figured I'll answer another question. One question that came up so much was, are you getting married? And please can you knit your wedding dress? And it's so funny because this is something that we just talked about a few hours ago, and we decided that we're gonna get married in a couple of months. Oh my god, I can't believe I've just gone ahead and done this. I decided to knit and crochet my own wedding dress in approximately 5 weeks' time. This is possibly the most crazy thing I will ever attempt to knit and or crochet. Let's rewind a little bit. The thing is, and I've been really careful to not jinx it, but we have been now living in a rented place for a year, and the whole time the idea has been that we're gonna try to find a place of our own and try to find a house to live in. So not a flat in a I don't know what you call it in English, but basically move out from the city center and instead try to live in a house. And we actually have found a house. But I've been really careful to not jinx it too much, because I'm just afraid that if I talk about it before everything is actually done and we've actually done the whole purchase, there's so many things that goes into it and all these papers that need to be signed and things that need to be checked and all that. So I haven't talked about it, but the last couple of weeks has just been going through that, and kind of, for me, it's the first time of buying anything, and house mortgages and all that feels very grown up. But the house, actually, we both talked about it and said this is a perfect place to have a party. And then we of course thought oh yeah, we're gonna have a housewarming party, and we want to have it quickly so it doesn't become too much pressure. And then, because we've been engaged for over a year, Juki threw out the idea, kind of said why don't we have the housewarming party and get married, so that it's a housewarming party and a wedding. And I don't know, for me it just immediately felt yes, let's do it. In 7 weeks we're getting married. So everything is happening pretty fast, and of course, first I thought, ooh, maybe I should knit my own wedding dress, but then I sort of thought, no, it's too much, it's too stressful, there isn't enough time. But then the more I looked online, trying to find a dress, the more I started to think maybe I should do it. And I was even thinking maybe I should sew it myself, because I did used to sew quite a lot. But then when I was looking and browsing for inspiration, I just got this feeling oh, maybe I should do it. And how cool would it be to have that as a memory from the wedding day, from the ceremony. And I don't know, but now of course I'm really excited. I've got a lot of adrenaline, momentum going. I ordered the yarn, but I have no idea in 3 weeks time if it's gonna be tears and frustration, and maybe it's not gonna go at all as planned. We don't know, but right now I feel really good about it, even though I'm kind of nervous at the same time.
Oot sä innoissas meidän häistä?
On tietenkin. Tämä oli mun idea kuitenkin, että nyt pidetään tossa noin nää.
Niin totta. Ja ei kaduta, että on niin pieni aikataulu.
Ei, se on just parasta.
Pieni, tiukka aikataulu.
Mieluummin tällainen tiukka. Kaikki puristetaan nopeasti vaan ja sit hyvät juhlat.
Toivottavasti. So a lot of you also wanted to know something about Juki. So here he is. We're now on our way to take an evening swim, even though it's kind of rainy, but it's pretty warm.
Mä täytin just viime perjantaina 41.
Ja mitä sä teet työksessä?
En mitään.
Et mitään. Haluaisit sä vähän selittää?
Mä päätin 40-vuotiaana ollut 20-vuotiaasta asti töissä eri suunnittelualoilla ja sisustussuunnittelua ja kaikennäköistä suunnittelua ja projekteja ulkomailla ja kotimaassa. Niin sitten tuli vaan se olo, että nyt on hyvä tehdä se pieni välitilinpäätös ja vähän nauttii elämästä, ei jättää työt vähäksi aikaa pois kokonaan, ja tässä sitä ollaan.
I just remembered one question was if I have a tattoo, but I don't. But I know somebody who has. Somebody also asked what languages I speak at home. So my mother tongue is actually Swedish. So with my whole family and some of my closest, oldest friends, I speak Swedish. With Juki, I speak Finnish because that's my second language. And then, well, English. I understand some French and German. Yes.
Random question. It's the backdrop is awful there, so. But then the light is awful there. Let's
Why
go
am I
in.
standing like this, like a cool school child?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Your hobbies outside of like photography and stuff like this. All right.
Do I have any hobbies outside of this?
Sports.
Sports. I like running. And like working out. I like climbing. I like bouldering. That's something we tried first time. Or I tried first time. Last year. That's fun. I've only done it a couple of times, but I think that's fun. I think that could count as a hobby. And shopping? Is shopping a hobby?
No.
No. And I was actually thinking about today, I would like to start taking singing classes again. And then I would also like to learn the piano. But other than that, I feel like all my hobbies are work. What a lame person I am.
Sad.
Sad. Okay, what are your hobbies?
Main thing at the moment is bikes, bike parks, downhill biking. Every bike. I just love bikes. So I have the whole variety of bikes. I think like 10 bikes.
The reason you bought a van and transformed it is because you could take your bikes with you and travel, right?
Yeah, and there's about like 3 bikes traveling with me.
I feel like that says the level of seriousness. If you build or you buy a lousy van and you rebuild it just for your bikes.
Yeah, we have to compromise on the bed and everything else, just that the bikes are feeling good.
Serious stuff, man.
I think that's taking the most time. What other hobbies? I think I've done
You've done all
everything.
Sport.
Yeah,
You've tried everything.
I think everything with contact, speed.
Like martial arts, speed, like you've had a sailing boat. You've done everything.
Yeah, motorcycles.
Rugby and ice hockey, like everything.
Everything.
I have a question for you. We can edit this out if it gets too awkward. But in the beginning of this video, I told people that we have been trying to get a baby for a year. And
Why is it like this?
Why is it like this? No, but how have you felt about it? Because I said it's been like ups and downs, and sometimes it's been pretty rough, and maybe you get a little disappointed.
I don't know. It's good to have loads of practice.
Cut, edit out. Censor. Good morning. I am up bright and early. I'm going to go and meet my sister at a cafe, and I thought I would answer a couple more questions out here. This was a question that many of you asked. How many hours do you knit on average a day? So this will depend a lot. I mean, some days it really isn't actually that much, but then I'll have these like marathon days, especially if I have a project that I really want to finish, and I can just sit and knit, maybe go for a walk in the morning, then, 10 a.m. I'll sit and knit in front of the TV. I always have a little bit of that feeling like, I should be doing proper work, but then I always remind myself, no, this is actually work. So some days I for sure knit like 8 to 10 hours. Some days it's only like a couple of hours. Usually, always in the evenings, I do get like 2 to 3 hours of knitting time. Okay, juicy question time. How much do you spend on yarn on average a month? I did not look through my bank statement, but I think it's a lot. I think it's, especially when I was making the book, because then I had always such an excuse to spend on yarn because I was making my book. But probably I mean, it's probably a couple of €100 a month at least on yarn, which is a lot because there's no way I can knit as fast as I can buy more. But I'd say probably 200 to 300 euros per month at least. Probably some months like much more. Don't tell Juki. Are you a full-time content creator or do you have another income source? So I am a full-time content creator, so YouTube is one income stream. I get money from the ads that are shown at the beginning and sometimes at the middle of these videos. Then I do sponsorships here on YouTube. I used to do also on Instagram, but there haven't been that much lately. So when I talk about a brand, and obviously I'm very picky with the brands I work with, then I sell my knitting patterns, the digital patterns, so that's also an income source. And then I have my digital courses, which have also been actually a very good income source for me. So those are like the main ways that I make a living, but I don't have any other job. I am self-employed entrepreneur. This is all I do.
I'm wearing a top that I just knitted for kind of fun. I just started to knit something. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna maybe write down the pattern for it because it became quite nice. I'm still kind of undecided if I want to have like also ribbed shoulder straps or around the armhole opening, because now you can kind of see my top underneath there. So I'm not sure, but at the same time I kind of like that it has kind of this what do you call it, like this kind of shoulder tank top. It's called something fancy, can't remember. Anyways, Rico, completely tired. What are your thoughts on acrylic yarn? This is a question that quite a lot of you asked. So back in the day when I was a teenager, I would for sure also use acrylic yarn and kind of blends, and I didn't really pay that much attention to the material. And acrylic yarn can have good benefits because it's more durable often than like purely wool material. But I do feel that when you then have been knitting for a while, at least for me, I often find that acrylic yarns, and maybe not with blend so much, but if it's like 100% acrylic, I just feel like the look of it is a little bit too shiny. There's something like industrial about it, and just something that I feel is a little off-putting. Like I just don't really like the texture and the fiber itself so much. But of course that there are sock yarns that have, for example, like 20% of like nylon or something acrylic in them, and I think that's completely fine because it will actually make it more durable. And often I also feel like when there's a bit of a blend, it can be less itchy, and I'm somebody who's pretty sensitive to itchiness. Like very coarse wool fiber is not something that I usually knit in, just because I know that then I'll have a hard time wearing it. And maybe also acrylic yarn, I mean, of course it is usually a cheaper alternative, so I think that's totally fine. And if you find an acrylic yarn that it's nice, and often it can be very soft to the skin, so it can actually be a good option. But I personally first look at what it looks like and what it feels like, and then I'll look at the content of the actual yarn. And then, you know, I'm like one of these weird people who in the yarn shop I go around and like I do like this a lot just to make sure, like, will it be itchy against my skin, because that is something that is important for me. And then of course the look and the feel of it. So yeah, my thoughts on acrylic yarn. I mean, there's a lot of like yarn snobbery out there, and I think especially like in the knitting world, and sometimes when you see a sweater and you have the pattern for it, and when you start to do the calculations and you realize you'll have to spend like 150 euros or dollars on the yarn itself, like it can be pretty an expensive hobby. But at the same time, when you then invest in good materials, at least in my experience, also living in a country that gets very, very cold in the winters, a wool sweater is just so much better and warmer and more pleasant
when it gets really cold. Like acrylic does not help when it's minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. Then you want like proper wool or some alpaca. Then acrylic is really, in my opinion, quite useless. And then you also get like kind of sweaty and it just doesn't breathe. So, but I think it's all like personal preference and opinion. This was also really made me kind of laugh because there were actually a few that asked, has your partner ever commented that you have too much yarn? Not maybe directly, but indirectly, I think he's hinted at some slight dissatisfaction when I completely invade the couch with all my yarns, and they're in our apartment. There's just yarn everywhere and unfinished and in progress works. So sure, I think he sometimes thinks their yarn is quite present in our lives and in his life, even though he hasn't asked for it.
Onko sun mielestä mulla liikaa lankaa?
Ei tietenkään, sitä just sopivasti.
Sitä just Okay.
Puolet meidän seinätilasta pelkkää lankaa ja lattiatilasta.
But it's also now become my work, so he can't really, or I don't think he would say that I have too much, but maybe sometimes when I go and buy more yarn, even though I've just said that I shouldn't and I'm not gonna buy more yarn, he can give me a bit of a look like, really? Do you really need that yarn? So in that way, yeah, but then I can always just say that it's for work and I need it for my career. So that's a really good but also a very dangerous excuse to have. Do you feel some of your love or passion for knitting has left since it is both work and a hobby? This is always an interesting question, I think, when you turn your hobby or passion into work. And I've done that now, I feel, multiple times in my life, because dance was first my really big passion and my hobby, and then I turned that into a career, even though I didn't really practice it as a career that much, but I studied it for so many years, and I then have a degree in dance and choreography, and then with photography I did that, and now with knitting. And yeah, it changes, I think, the relationship, of course, but with knitting I don't feel like my passion has gotten any weaker. Actually, contrary, I feel it's more like stronger than ever, and I feel super passionate about it. I have so many ideas. I actually more have the feeling or struggle of I have so many ideas and I feel there's so little time to do all those things, so I instead have to just call myself like it's okay that I don't do every idea. So no, I don't feel like that. Of course, there are then aspects to, for example, writing knitting patterns and organizing like test knits and those kind of aspects that maybe feel more like work. So it's not only like fun. Knitting is now not only something I just do for myself, but when I knit something, I often think about, if I'm going to turn it into a pattern, what kind of yarns I decide and the design and how I'll make it easy for somebody to understand or replicate in a pattern. So those things, it affects it maybe, but then sometimes a little bit of like what I did with this top, I just started to knit it for fun. I wasn't really thinking that I even will turn it into a pattern necessarily, and then just kind of see. So but no, I don't feel like it's affected my love for the craft in a negative way, at least.
I'm out for a little bit of an evening run, and I thought this is a good place to finish this video, but I thought I'd answer one last question, which was if I ever miss dancing. So to those of you who don't know, before I started this whole thing and being a content creator and like all the knitting and all that, I studied contemporary dance for like forever. Ever since I was a child, I've always been dancing. First with like classical ballet, then jazz, then I wanted to be in musicals, and then contemporary dance is where I sort of ended up. And I did a master's degree in that. And then also did some productions where I actually like got paid for the work, although those were more for choreography. But to be honest, I have mixed feelings about that whole thing
because I studied it for so long and it was such a big dream, and to become an artist and work with contemporary art and in the art scene, there's so many really amazing things with that, but there are also things that like the realities set also in after you graduate and you're not in that bubble of studying anymore. And maybe you can relate to that. I think that's probably true for a lot of professions or also other art disciplines, that when you're in school, you're kind of in a bubble and it's really nice because you have that sense of community. But once that ends, you're kind of on your own, and the harsh realities of trying to get funding to actually do your art, and also just because there are a lot of artists out there, a lot of talented people, so to get any work can also be a struggle. So all of that stuff I felt to be quite challenging and stressful, and maybe also I was quite tired, a little bit burnt out, I think, after studying because it was so intense. So I sort of took a break, but then that break just drew, and I started to do other things, and then I just never really got back to it. And I don't know, I've been struggling with it, and I was struggling with it for a long time, and obviously I miss dancing, maybe more so before than now. Now, I mean, I go for runs, do some yoga and stretching and try to keep fit, and also go to, like, I like to take these kind of group classes at the gym and those kind of things. I think that's fun to do, to try to still like be active and move, also because like with knitting and also working in front of a laptop and editing these videos, it's very static, and I know that I need to like move my body to feel good, but I can get really like a lot out of just like almost any type of movement. But I do miss dancing. I don't think, to be honest, I think I probably would have started doing other stuff or pursue other things as well, even if I would have continued down that path. But I mean, you don't know, of course. But I wish maybe the transition and maybe stepping away from it would have gone a little smoother. I feel like it was quite traumatic somehow because I put so much pressure on myself. I did also feel some pressure from the outside and maybe a little from my parents, you know, questioning why I had put in so much work and so many years into an education that I didn't then pursue. So I felt quite a lot of guilt for it also for a long time. But I think everything happens for a reason, and I think to anybody who's struggling out there at the moment and maybe not really knowing what direction to take next, I feel you so much. I know how difficult it can be, and the question like, what do you want to do? It's a really loaded and really difficult question. I still, if I think too much about what I want to do, I get almost numb because it almost implies that you have control of your life. If I feel more, what has been helpful is more to think maybe what pulls me or what I'm curious and interested about in that moment. Then obviously when you try stuff, you don't know if it's gonna work. I mean, immediately you have to be a little bit, I guess, maybe naive in that sense, but like, what do you want to do? And what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And those questions, I at least think, are very heavy. And those have been the questions that I spent like, I feel like my whole 20s thinking about. So yeah, that's what I want to end on. If you don't know, I'm sure it's gonna work out. Things work out. Try some things, try to not put too much pressure on it. Also, like, there's so much more time than we think. Like, we see everybody else doing things online, and, you know, I can also start comparing myself, especially with social media. You have time. It's gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. That's what the words I wanted to end on. So for anybody who needed to hear that today, I hope that gives you some comfort. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this juicy Q&A. Maybe we'll do more of these in the future. Now, I'm gonna go home, stretch a little bit. I had a day of, I don't know, I was kind of frustrated. I felt like I didn't get really stuff done today, but then I also feel like going out, moving my body, working out a little bit, getting a sweat always helps me get in a better mood. Alright, if you want to see more of my stuff, you can come say hi. I'm over at Kutuva Kika as well. And I will see you in a video here back soon. Bye!